All right, we are live on Twitter, Facebook, Twitch, and YouTube. We've got Mr. Fox back with us here again on this beautiful Thursday. We are talking the Cleveland Browns and the Cincinnati Bengals, an all-Ohio show today. How are you gentlemen doing on this beautiful Thursday, just 3 weeks away from live NFL action?
Well, most of us are live anyways, except Boomer the Duck.
Our condolences.
I'm doing pretty good. It's been a crazy week at work, but it's almost seeing the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I should have I was off Monday, Tuesday. I was supposed to be up at Dennis is rocking the Fantasy Midwest Expo shirt. I was supposed to be up there this year for finally being able to make my way up there. And yeah, obviously with everything going on with the shit show that we consider 2020, that got canceled. So I wasn't able to make it up there. So I ended up going into work, and I'm seriously regretting that decision. I feel like I should have just taken off. This has been just a horrible week, but it is almost over. And as I mentioned, we are just 3 weeks away from live NFL action. Like me and Matt and probably Tony will be sitting here in 3 Thursdays previewing a Thursday night football game between the Houston Texans and the Kansas City Chiefs. And then Friday, you will see the three of us together previewing the entire NFL slate. I cannot wait, man. I need some football in my life so bad. So I cannot wait for that to happen.
What's a Tony?
What's a Tony? I don't know. Tony the Tiger, right?
Hey, we should say our friend Tony got a new house. So
he did.
That's why he's not with us.
That is why.
Good reason.
Let's correct that really quick. It's not a house. He has bought a palatial estate.
Yeah,
all right,
he's quite the estate.
Look, Peyton Manning lives in Denver now, so he had to put his place up there.
I know. Tony bought Peyton Manning's house, his old house. We're not even joking with you. Like it's a beautiful looking house. Yes, very much congratulations to Tony. I know that is why he's kind of missed a lot lately. He's had a lot going on. Anybody who's gone through that process knows what it's like. So he's got a lot going on, but he should be back with us next week as we're doing some of the AFC, NFC stuff. My goodness, I can't talk. Conference stuff. So we are very excited for him, though. So congratulations again to Tony. I know it's been
we
really
have some place to stay next year when we go to the combine.
Exactly.
We can stay in the pool house.
He won't even know we're there. We could just sneak in and stay at like the left wing, and he won't even notice we're there. So yeah, it's gonna be awesome though. I can't. I'm happy for him. I really am. I don't want to give too much away. We know he was very excited to get that house, so we're very happy for him. But as you guys can see from this flag behind me and this jersey that I decided to throw on today, we're talking about my Cleveland Browns. I cannot wait to kick this season off. I had a little bit more excitement at this time last year talking about my Browns because I thought they were going to be a playoff team. I'm tempering expectations a little bit more this year, but they do have a very exciting team.
Live and learn, Matt. Live and learn.
You know, I was going to say clearly by me throwing this on, I haven't because I still, live and die with the Browns. And what was the quote I heard today? If you want to be good at fantasy football, you have to divorce yourself from the fan mentality. And I have yet to figure that out in like my decade of playing fantasy football. But for the Cleveland Browns, they finished 6-10 last year. I guess the easiest way to ask this is same old Browns, new coaching staff. Seems like every year they get a new coaching staff. But do you guys believe in this one? There's been a lot of hype about Stefanski and the way that they are doing things now in Cleveland. What are your guys' thoughts on the new coaching staff with the Browns?
Barry Stefanski 2020, man. Barry Stefanski 2020. Beats the other options.
I don't disagree with you on that.
Bury him put him in the ground? That doesn't sound that optimistic.
No, Andrew Berry, the general manager, who's done phenomenal, I think. Yeah, so Barry Stefanski.
Big brain guy in the office.
I think, if they get off to a hot 2-4 start, it might be Barry Stefanski with the Bury version.
Right.
Yeah,
but
possibly.
Cleveland's too talented we were too talented for where they finished last year. I know you don't want to hear this, but that was disappointing even to non-fans. I think I thought they were going to make it in there. I almost wonder if they're not in for a Kirk Cousins in Minnesota year 2 kind of post-hype sleeper. Because if you remember when Cousins went there the first year, everybody's like, oh, they're going to be in the Super Bowl. They were in the NFC Championship game last year, and they rolled out and didn't even make the playoffs, and it didn't go as planned. But after a year being together and figuring some things out with Kevin Stefanski, they made it into the playoffs, and I think that could easily be the track for Cleveland.
Yeah, I am excited about it. I'm excited about the season, obviously. I don't want to get too excited. I do like the hire of Stefanski. You know, Dennis mentioned Andrew Berry there. I think he's done phenomenal things in that front office. They all seem to be pulling the same direction, I think, which is huge because last year you had the front office and Freddie Kitchens going one way and then all the analytics going another way. Everybody seems to be pulling in the same direction. You know, Baker seems to be a little bit different. Obviously, some of the news that's come out here lately with the Chubb concussion, Mac Wilson's knee injury isn't a great way to start off the season. But regardless, I'm with you. I have high hopes, mostly because they added that extra playoff team this year. So I feel like we really have a shot to make the playoffs.
If nothing, our odds are just a teeny tiny bit better.
Exactly. All right, so new additions. As I mentioned, Andrew Berry has been busy this offseason. Case Keenum comes in to back up Baker on a 2-year contract. Yes, back up Baker. He is not going to be the starter for anybody who keeps floating that nonsense out there. Austin Hooper comes in on a 4-year contract. He is the most expensive tight end, or gets the highest paid tight end contract in the business. They bring back Rashard Higgins on a 1-year contract, which I thought was a great move. Hunt comes back on a 1-year contract. JoJo Natson, I just threw this in there because he's a really explosive special teams player. He's not going to mean anything for fantasy, but I personally am just excited to watch him play. So that's why I threw it in there. Again, not much for fantasy, but Garrett does get the huge extension, was the highest paid defensive player for like 3 days before Joey Bosa got his contract. David Njoku, they exercised his 5th-year option. Harrison Bryant, they drafted in the 4th round, and Donovan Peoples-Jones got drafted in the 6th. They did not lose anybody of real note on the offensive side, and expiring contracts at the end of this year, Kareem Hunt, Dontrell Hilliard, and Rashard Higgins. Fantasy finishes, Baker finishes QB 19 with 250.18 points. Chubb, RB 8 with 255.2. Kareem Hunt, RB 47 with 101.4, only played in the 7 games. Landry, wide receiver 12 with 237.4 points. Odell, wide receiver 25 with 201.3 points. And then Austin Hooper, tight end 6 with 191.7. All of that with the Falcons in 13 games. A new offensive system. This is Baker's 3rd year in the NFL, and it is his 3rd offensive system. Kind of been jerking this guy around a little bit, I think. I know me and Dennis have talked about it before. We've been on here a little bit longer than Matt's been with us. We've always talked about with rookie quarterbacks and just quarterbacks in general, keep switching offensive scenarios and coaches every year is not a good thing for you. So what do you guys think about Baker? Is this his prove-it year? I mean, he, again, 3rd year in the league with a third new offensive coordinator. If he doesn't have a good year, do you guys think the Browns might move on from him?
Well, I think he'll be there in his 4th year, definitely. The Stefanski offense is going to take some pressure off him. They're going to run the ball a little more. Unless they have offensive line issues, when you've got Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, you have the ability to take the pressure off the quarterback. And the way it's set up with 2 excellent wide receivers, good tight ends, and 2 great running backs, there's no need for Baker to press. They've got a decent offensive line. And so I think that he'll have a good season, even if his stats maybe are just a touch under what we might want, because I do expect the rushing attempts to go up significantly.
Yeah, so I mean, we've seen Baker put up some incredible fantasy stats and the team not win, and we've seen him put up some marginal stats and the team not win. I think the measure of success for him is getting into the playoffs. If you look at what Cousins did in Stefanski's system last year, he was probably better in terms of what you saw in the NFL than necessarily for fantasy. He was a middle-tier QB2. I think that should be a starting point for Baker. I think he could end up being higher than that. But I think he would probably tell you the same thing. The metric for him being successful, they want to capitalize on their hype and make it into the playoffs. And if they get into the playoffs and he's QB 20, I don't think any Browns fans are going to be complaining.
I might be. But that's just because I own him on way too many teams, so that'll hurt my fantasy chances. But yeah, I'm with you guys. I don't think it's a prove it year. I kind of put that question in there as I do a Browns podcast, obviously, as well for the Back Row Network, and it seems like a lot of people are talking about the signing of Case Keenum, which was a little bit weird. They brought him in and paid him an absurd amount of money for a backup quarterback, but the Browns had the cap money to spend, whatever. He comes in with knowledge of that offense, which I think is going to help out Baker as well. I don't think Baker goes anywhere. I think at worst, like Dennis mentioned, he's for sure going to be there year 4. I would be surprised if they don't pick up his 5th-year option, and that I think will be the prove it year if he continues on that downward trend. But I think, as Matt mentioned, we saw way too much that rookie year for me to think he's going to be bad. They needed to take pressure off of him, and I think this offensive system, like Dennis mentioned, is going to do that. It suits Baker's skill set better than what Freddie tried to do in the second half of that season.
Well, I don't think that Browns fans should be worried about Keenum. I think every time they bring up Keenum as the starter, I think they just need to say, well, do you remember Jim Sorgi? I mean, when Peyton got hurt and Jim Sorgi was the quarterback of the Colts, it was a disaster. And so there's nothing – a smart team has a capable backup quarterback. You might not have a quarterback like Peyton Manning as your backup, but you damn well better have somebody, if the quarterback gets hurt, that isn't going to be the reason you don't win. They can be – it's okay for them to not be the reason you do win, but you don't want them to consistently be the reason you don't.
Well, and if you think about it too, Keenum had arguably his most successful year as a pro there in Minnesota when Stefanski was on the staff, and it was in that very position. He didn't come there with the expectation that we're going to roll him out as a starter. When they lost, I think it was Bradford, who they had traded for. When they lost Bradford, he was able to come in and have some success. So he's a guy that knows the system, that if nothing else can be a good mentor for Baker going through and learning the system, and gives you some insurance. I think we saw a couple of teams that hope to contend moving to give themselves some insurance, because we've seen what happens when you're a contending team that has an unfortunate quarterback injury and can't sustain a certain level of play.
Yeah, and I agree with that on both counts. Like what Dennis said and what you just said makes a lot of sense. If Baker were to go down, which, I mean, please, dear God, don't let that happen. But if he were, as Matt mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, the Browns have so much talent that even bringing in a capable backup like Case Keenum should allow – he's going to give the Browns a couple more wins than they would if they threw out there a – Mason Rudolph or Duck Hodges type like the Pittsburgh Steelers did last year. Like Case Keenum is better than them, and they have the talent to possibly push their way into the playoffs with him. He may not take them to the Super Bowl, but he can get them wins to push toward a playoff run. So Chubb, Hunt, Chubb, Hunt. I mean, everybody seems to talk about them splitting time like Freddie did last year. I did not think that was handled well, although it seems like everybody kind of thinks Freddie kind of handled things pretty badly last year. What do you guys think will be the split between those two, or how do you expect them to be used in the 2020 season?
Well, Stefanski has said that he's looking to use some 21 personnel, not just 12 personnel. So there'll be times when they're both on the field. Chubb is going to get a lot of carries. He's firmly inside my top 12. I think I got him at 10, so maybe I got him at 12. Maybe he's not. Maybe he's not as firmly inside there as I think he is. But I feel like Chubb is on the brink of leading the NFL in rushing this year. That offensive line should be able to produce for him. They've got a passing game that can open it up. And much like having Keenum, should Baker get hurt, having a back like Kareem Hunt as your second running back, you don't have to necessarily switch things up with your offense. So there'll be some, misdirection that'll open up stuff. Chubb is going to get plenty of work. Is it going to be 80-20? Probably not. But I think 300 carries is probably in the works for Chubb.
Yeah, I think they'll both end up having a role. We've I think all thought that Kareem Hunt will probably be more involved as a pass catcher, and that makes a lot of sense. you saw, for a while there when they had Alexander Madison last year, both he and Cook had games where they were fantasy relevant. I don't think we'll see Chubb maybe hit some of the receiving numbers that Cook had, but I think you can see they very much want to run, and we saw them both be very effective. I think they're both going to end up being weapons.
Yeah, I'm with you guys on that. I think the biggest difference for me is, and I get most of us now playing PPR leagues, but I think Chubb is such a good runner, and behind that offensive line, he is going to put up points that, yes, if he was getting the PPR points, if he was getting catches out of the backfield, he'd be even better, but he's still good enough running the ball that he's going to, at least in my opinion, as well as Dennis, as I think, Matt, you've got him in there too. He's going to finish as a top 12 running back in fantasy just based on his pure running ability, because when they get down in the red zone, I think they're going to give the ball to Chubb more than they do Hunt. But Hunt is going to get some work. There's no doubt about it. They keep talking him up, and as Dennis mentioned, they'll go into that 21 personnel, have them both out on the field. Could be something where they fake the play to Chubb, and then Hunt goes out on a little screen pass, and they throw it to him. I had nothing against that, but I do think I was in an argument with someone on Twitter the other day saying that they have not only do they have Hunt above Chubb, they think he's going to finish much higher than Chubb in fantasy points this year. I don't see that unless Chubb gets hurt. There's just no way. Chubb is not the pass catcher that Hunt is, but he is the better back, in my opinion, and his running ability is so much better than Hunt's. I know Hunt led the league in rushing his rookie season, but Chubb is just different. I think Chubb is going to be a phenomenal back for them, and I do think, as we saw with Minnesota the past couple of years, they're going to lean heavily on the run to set up that play action and the kind of play action passes that works well for Baker and his game. Do you guys think it's even close before we move on to the next one of Hunt outscoring Chubb for fantasy this season if they both stay healthy the entire season?
I don't.
You're muted, Dennis.
No.
Short and sweet.
Well, I think
it's going to be.
You're good. You froze up on us for a minute. Yeah, you're good.
Now, Chubb's going to be pushing 300 carries, and I think Hunt is going to be in the 140, 150, but Chubb will probably have 20, 25 passes, receptions, and Hunt will probably be around 50 or 60. So, no, he's not going to outscore him.
Yeah. All right. So OBJ, by his own admission, the training staff coaches seems to be fully healthy now coming into this season. No injuries or anything. Obviously, we won't see any preseason games. They'll just have the practices, which obviously you can still get injured in, but he's coming in fully healthy. What is the ceiling for him and your guys' expectation in this offense for him in 2020?
Take it, Matt.
For which player are you dropped
for
off
Odell?
I think he'll still end up being the better of the two receivers for fantasy finishes. I had him. I was just going to check since we have our handy. I'm going to pull a Dennis and actually, before I say my position, double check. I think he'll be right in there wide receiver 2 range. I think another year with Baker will help that relationship. It seemed like at times last year they weren't quite on the same page, and I think that'll be a little bit better this year. But the real question is, they have a lot of pass catching options now in Cleveland, and they also have a couple of great running backs. And in this system, they would really like to run and build a lead and play some good defense. So even though they might have a better connection and more success when they're throwing it, they may not have to throw it as many times, which is, I think, what puts, it's almost an embarrassment of riches, which might put a ceiling on all of the pass catchers.
Yeah, I have Beckham at wide receiver 16. So for reference, that was DJ Chark's position last season. I'm trying to grab Chark's numbers here real quick to see what that stat line looked like. So I'll talk here and stall.
Oh, I'll give his fantasy points really quick while you do that. He finished with 225.8 fantasy points, averaged 15.1 points a game And you can give his
Chark
NFL
did?
stats. Yeah.
Yeah, Chark had 73 receptions for 1,008 yards and 8 touchdowns. So to me, that seems like he had 118 targets.
Yeah.
I think that's a decent target share. When you reduce the play differential between the Vikings and the Browns last season was 3. So there was only 3 plays difference, but the Vikings ran the ball, I think it was 84 times more than the Browns did. So Beckham's numbers are going to be, they have to be impacted by that. And Baker isn't going to, I don't think he forces the ball 12 or 15 times to one receiver. He may force the ball a couple times early to get Beckham involved, but then once he's got his attention, then Baker's going to who's open. And frequently that's Jarvis Landry. Landry will probably be in the same area with catches. He won't have quite the yardage and may not have the touchdown numbers Beckham does. I mean, Beckham is the more dynamic player. So I like Beckham to, be a mid to high wide receiver 2 next season.
Yeah, that's why I wish we had preseason games. So he was actually targeted 133 times last year. I'm sorry. I thought he caught 74 balls for 1,035 yards with the 4 touchdowns. Odell was, not Chark. Odell.
Chark did? Oh.
No, that was Odell's
Gotcha.
stat. Odell was targeted 133 times. So okay. I agree that I don't think it goes up that, or actually I think it could go up more. If you go look at what Stefanski was part of the offense with Minnesota before Matt, what's his name? It just jumped out of my head.
Kubiak, Gary Kubiak.
Before Kubiak came over there, they were more pass heavy. They were more about getting their wide receivers involved. I do think that they're bringing over, I think Stefanski's even come out and said, I'm bringing over the Kubiak offense. He's not maybe that exact wording in the quote, but he referenced how Kubiak runs his offense, and that's how he wants to do it in Cleveland. That being said, I do think that Odell is going to get more chances because the other thing is he is one of the best route runners in the game. I think with the play action, all it takes is for him to make that one move, and he's going to get open. And the difference with this year, I think, compared to last year, and I know Dennis watches a lot of the Browns games. I can't remember what game it was. I think it was the Seattle Seahawks game where the Browns were obviously winning early. Seattle starts coming back, and then Odell beats his guy on the outside and has easily, I think it was 5 or 6 yards separation. And Baker couldn't get the ball to him because of how bad the offensive line was. And that happened a lot last year. And not just Odell. Jarvis, as Dennis mentioned as well, was getting open. And with the way that offensive line is hopefully going to be improved with Wills coming over there on the left side, you've got Conklin now on the right-hand side. I think it allows Baker a little bit more time to allow guys like Odell to get open. So I do think he's going to be in for a big year. I had him at 9, so I'm obviously the highest out of all of us on him. I think he's going to return, again, 4 touchdowns last year. If he even gets a couple more, he shoots up the rankings past guys like Chark and everything who were at 16. They just didn't get him the ball enough, I think, in the red zone either. So I'm expecting a big year from Odell, as I just mentioned. What do you guys expect from Landry? Dennis, I know you kind of mentioned it there a little bit. I'll just start mine first. Since I'm expecting such a big year for Odell, I'm expecting Landry to take a little bit of a hit. Still think he gets a very decent workload and of volume. I think they will throw the ball to him a lot, but I think his touchdowns come down a little bit. Probably his yards. I was trying to remember where I had him ranked and I accidentally closed out of that window, but I want to say it was right around 22 or 23, if I'm remembering correctly. So I'm expecting him to take a little bit of a dip here. I have 24. So I have
had him at 24.
So I have him as a wide receiver 2, but I do think he takes a little bit of a dip because of the way I'm expecting Odell to jump up. What are your guys' thoughts on Landry for 2020?
I have him right at that same exact spot at 24. He led the team in receptions last year with, I think, 83 compared to Beckham's 74, and had the edge on him in yards as well. So Landry had one of his better seasons on a yard per reception basis with 14.1. I do think that's going to come down a little bit, and his receptions will come down a little bit. So he'll be behind Beckham. Not too far. Like I said, I've got them ranked at 16 and 24. So I have them both as wide receiver twos.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have Landry just a little bit behind that. I had him at 27, so just outside wide receiver 2 range. Again, I'm more cautious than either of you about thinking, with so many targets, because we figured Kareem Hunt's going to get plenty of targets. They now have 2 tight ends they're trying to work in there. They have a couple other receivers that could get in there. I think we'll see them come down a little bit as the team's more successful.
So the tight end room is actually kind of interesting here. They obviously brought over Hooper. I put Hoppers on here, which I thought was kind of funny. They brought over Hooper in the offseason. David Njoku, who earlier in the year requested a trade, now is all in on Cleveland after you had a chance to sit down and talk with Barry and Stefanski, which I do like. I do like that sat down and talk with them. He seems to be all in, doesn't want to leave Cleveland now. And they drafted Harrison Bryant, which I know Dennis watched because we constantly bring up the way Anthony McFarland torched the Buckeyes when Maryland played them. While they beat the crap out of FAU, Harrison Bryant had himself a game against the Buckeyes, was it last year? And he's a very good tight end, and they drafted him in the 4th round as well, which I think in a way honestly kind of spells bad news more for Njoku than it does Hooper. But what are your guys' thoughts on the floor and ceiling for Hooper? And then if you have any thoughts on Njoku or Harrison Bryant for 2020 or beyond?
Well, I have had Njoku outscoring Hooper, and I'm sticking to it. They're both, I think, going to be low-end tight end twos, in part because they'll cannibalize each other. With running the 12 personnel, Njoku is the better athlete, and I think that's going to show up. Harrison Bryant is somebody I think this is a team that's building for the future. Yes, they exercised Njoku's 5th-year option, so they do have him for a couple more years. Hooper they signed to, I think, a 4-year contract. So they would seem to be set. I'm not going to count on Bryant to have a breakout for at least a couple years. But I do like Hooper and Njoku to both of them being probably the 40 to 50 reception range. I think after the 2 wide receivers, Njoku and Hooper and Hunt are all going to be kind of clustered together in there with their receptions.
Yeah, I think this year it's pretty much going to be Hooper and Njoku. But, it'll be interesting. Njoku, obviously, in a contract year, expressed some displeasure earlier this offseason. They seem to have resolved it for this season, but it wouldn't be an incredible shock to see him end up moving on at the end of the season, in which case, if they like the idea of having 2 tight ends, Bryant gives them that kind of security for the future.
Yeah, I'm actually all in on Bryant for the future, regardless of what Njoku does. I just think he's too good of an offensive weapon. He'd be a guy that I'd be buying in, especially because of the way Stefanski runs his offense in that 2 tight end system. I do, obviously, it seems like we all are kind of leaning toward the Browns being successful this year. If that continues, that means Stefanski's likely going to be here for longer than a year or 2, which most Cleveland Browns coaches don't make it past 2 years. And if that's the case, I think Bryant's going to be a guy that they lean on moving forward. So Bryant's a guy I would buy into dynasty leagues, dynasty startups, because he's a guy you can get really late. I love Njoku. I loved when they drafted him. I don't know if I see a future with him with the Browns. I'd love for him to stay because I think he's a physical freak, but I think I know he's here this year. I think Matt said in contract he'll be here next year because of the 5th-year option.
Yeah, they have him for 2 more years, but they can get out of it after the 2020 season with just $3 million in dead cap. So it's not an insurmountable task to do, and by exercising that option, it gives him it gets in his head that, hey, they want me here. I'm going to be a good soldier. I'm going to go out there. I'm going to play hard. I'm going to quit squawking about wanting to be traded. And who knows, something good comes from it, and they keep him for 2 years.
Yeah, I would think if anything, which just may be crazy to say because we heard all the trade rumors obviously around the draft. There was talks about him possibly going to Washington for Trent Williams, which now I'm kind of glad they didn't do that deal because I love the way that they built their offensive line together and getting a guy like Wills to be the younger possible. I don't want to compare him to Joe Thomas, but in hopes of like having a career like that, right? Like come and be the left tackle and stabilize that offensive line for at least a decade. But I could see them if Njoku goes out there and has a good year, which we are both expecting. I believe Matt is as well with the way they're going to use Njoku and Hooper. They could move him next year, and he's still, like you just mentioned, very cap-friendly situation with the fifth-year contract that they can move to another team, possibly get something back, and then maybe that team decides to re-sign Njoku. I know I've talked about it on the Browns podcast. I'd love to see him go to a place like Washington because I think he could be an absolute deadly weapon there for Haskins at that tight end room. There's a lot of teams that need a good tight end, and I've mentioned it before, and I'll mention it again. I think Njoku looked better last year before he got hurt. He was not dropping the ball as much as he had been the past couple of years. He had admittedly been been working on that in training camps on the jug machine. So I'd love to see if the Browns don't decide to keep him get traded somewhere, possibly at the end of this year, beginning of next offseason, and give him a chance to show out. Because I still like Njoku, whether he's with the Browns or not. I think he's a really good kid and a really good player. And then I'm with you guys on Hooper. I'm just not as sold on him as others. I wouldn't be surprised if he jumps up in the top 12. Because as I feel like mentioned on this podcast every other episode, after like the 4 or 5 tight ends, the rest of them can finish anywhere. But I don't expect him to have a huge season because I expect them to use him more as a blocker than necessarily a guy who goes out and catches passes.
Yeah, they're tied to Hooper's contract for a number of years. It's I think if they tried to get out of it next year, they're going to have like $14.5 million in dead cap. It's not a good contract to be trying to get out of.
Yeah, I think the fourth year, right before that fourth year, they can get out of it for not a huge cap hit because I think it's the same.
$4 million, I think it is.
Yeah, him and Conklin because that's what I was thinking. I was like, man, they did a good job of setting those up based on who they have to pay moving forward. They loaded those contracts for these first couple years to allow them to pay guys like Myles Garrett this year. Hopefully Baker and Nick Chubb, possibly Denzel Ward moving forward. I don't know if they can pay all 3 of them, but just kind of they gave themselves a very good amount of flexibility there. I'm not going to lie. I really thought this episode was going to go longer than the others. We're only at like 32 minutes right now, and this is like the shortest we've talked about one team. It's a little depressing that it's the Browns. I really thought we'd be like at the 60-minute mark. I'm like, oh, shit, we got to rush the Bengals in really quick.
Well, we all like them. So. Yeah. There wasn't a lot of debate.
It's probably bad news. I think that's where we were all last year too, and we saw how well that worked out. So, but let's do our over-unders now. Matt is back with us, so we're not going to mess this up. Over, bad, under, good.
I already put it in the chat. Just in case.
All right, so over-under for Baker, QB 12 in 2020. Over or under?
I'm going over. I have him at 15.
I'm going over as well. I have him at 14.
I will go under because I am going to let my fan come out. Although I think I have him at 12. I'm not sure. So I'm just going to hope that he goes
9. You have him at 9.
Even better. So then, yeah.
You're going way under.
Hell yeah. Let's go. I'm going 4, baby. I think he's going to beat out Lamar Jackson. No, I'm going the under here for Baker. So as an ADP of 130, he is the 13th QB off the board. Just before him, Daniel Jones, Tua Tagovailoa, and Aaron Rodgers. Would you take him over any of those 3?
I have Rodgers rated ahead of him. I'm not taking, are we talking dynasty?
Yeah, dynasty.
I'm probably not taking Tua over him either. And who was the other one?
Daniel Jones and Rodgers.
I've got him back to back. I have Mayfield ahead of him. So there's definitely scenarios where I'd go, probably 70% Baker, 30% Jones, 80% Baker, 20% Jones out of 10 teams.
I'd take him over all 3. The closest one for me would probably be Jones, but I think Baker's in a better situation. It's weird to say Cleveland's a better situation than anyone, but the Giants, there's a lot of questions that still have to be answered there.
Yeah, Jones is the closest one for me as well. I mean, Tua is going to be a good player, but I don't know what Miami's offense is going to be. They need to improve that offensive line some. I think Baker, he was a number one pick for a reason. I loved him coming out of Oklahoma, so I would Jones would be close, but I think if I'm being honest with myself, if we're going 10 teams, I'm probably taking Baker 10 out of 10. I would want to diversify, but I don't think I could. So I would take him over all three. Just after him, Matt Ryan, Matthew Stafford, and Cam Newton. I would not take any of those over Baker moving forward. What about you guys?
I probably wouldn't take any of them over him either. I think Stafford will be finished better this year, but there's now become some questions about his long-term situation, which in Dynasty should give you a little bit of pause.
Yeah, I'm on the Baker Mayfield train there.
All right, so Nick Chubb, RB12, over or under?
I had him at 12, so this feels kind of crushing. I think Dennis has him at 12 too. I'm going to go with under because I think he's more likely 11 than 13.
Yeah, I'm going to go under as well.
And I have him way under at 8, so I'm going to take the under. I'm all in on Nick Chubb this year. ADP of 13.3. He is the 8th RB off the board. Just ahead of him, Joe Mixon, Dalvin Cook, and CEH. Would you take him over any of those three?
I'd take him over Edwards-Helaire.
So it was
Mixon, Cook. I know you won't take him over Mixon, so Cook and CEH. Yeah. Or you will take him over Mixon, I'm sorry.
I definitely take him. I actually think I might take him over all three. We don't know. Like, Cook will probably be better this year, but we have no idea where he ends up. Does he end up in this favorable situation? To me, he's still a little bit of an injury risk until we can see him prove it more than just 1 out of 3 years. So, or 4 years, whatever he's been in. So I probably, if pressed, would take him over all of them.
Yeah, I would as well. Mixon, he's in a contract year this year. We don't know if he's going to be back with Cincinnati. They have a really bad line to begin with. Cook, I actually heard on NFL radio today, there were some people talking about they think there's a better chance he's not back with Minnesota next year. They may just roll with Alexander Madison with their cap issues and everything going on. Don't know what Cook's situation looks like. I like CEH. He's going to be in a better offense when you have Patrick Mahomes as your quarterback. But I think I still take Cook just because Chubb, just because I think his rushing upside is going to be better than CEH's. Just behind him, Josh Jacobs, Jonathan Taylor, and Miles Sanders. Would you take any of those three over Chubb?
I have Sanders ranked ahead of him, so right now I'd take Sanders. I feel like Sanders is going to be more of a rushing and receiving threat, so he's going to get the volume on both ends. And I get the whole, Doug Peterson uses a committee and versus Doug Peterson has never had a back like Miles Sanders, I think. But for the most part, 99% of the time, the best players play.
Yeah, and when they signed Devonta Freeman on September 10th, and he ends up carrying the ball 24 times on September 13th, we'll all be crying into our soup. But I would probably take Sanders over him. It's a question for me for Taylor. I like his long-term prospects, so that's probably maybe a coin flip.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't know if I would take Sanders, but him and Taylor would both be coin flips for me. And Taylor, he's the exact same version of Chubb, and I hate to say this, but a little bit of a better runner than Chubb is. Taylor's phenomenal. He is elite at almost everything except for pass catching. But I do think he's with a better offensive line. I mean, Indy has the best offensive line in the league, in my opinion, and he doesn't really have – I really do think Marlon Mack is going to get moved, or he won't be with the team moving forward after this year. So Taylor has that backfield likely to himself moving forward, where we don't know what's going to happen with Hunt. If for whatever reason the Browns keep Hunt, that's going to kill Chubb's value moving forward. So Taylor would probably be the one that I might lean going over Chubb, just because I know for the most part I think I'm going to have Taylor in that backfield by himself moving forward. Kareem Hunt, RB24 in 2020, over or under?
Over.
I'm over as well.
I guess I should look at my rankings since you guys are doing that. I have him just slightly over as well. I have him at 26. ADP of 62.67. He is RB23 off the board. Just ahead of him, David Montgomery, Melvin Gordon, and Todd Gurley. I would take him over all three. What would you guys do?
Yeah, I think in Dynasty, I don't know. Sometimes, man, I fall in love with the year one volume, and Montgomery's definitely getting volume this year. I feel like Gordon's volume is a little bit more uncertain because of Philip Lindsay. And who was the third one?
Todd Gurley, Mr. Arthritic Knee.
Yeah, I'll take. But Gurley could rush for 700 yards this year and have 20 touchdowns.
Yeah, but that's just this year, and then he retires.
Right. I know Dynasty's about the future, but man, I love to win this year.
I got you.
So no, I'm probably taking Hunt over Gurley.
Yeah, I'd probably take him over Gurley and Gordon.
I mean, honestly, at that point in the draft, I'm probably taking a wide receiver. But
yeah, I'm with you. I just off topic here for just a minute. See, Vic Fangio said that Philip Lindsay is looking so good, there's no reason to name a starter. Philip Lindsay and Melvin Gordon carry the ball enough to be co-starters.
Yeah, and Melvin Gordon's hurt and said that he's having a really hard time breathing.
I saw that.
He can F right off.
I wasn't expecting that reaction. I was hoping to get a little bit of a rise out of you. All right. So right after Hunt, Devin Singletary, James Conner, and Duke Johnson. It was actually Geis, but I figured there's no reason in having Geis on here anymore, so I went Duke.
Wait, none of you guys are taking Geis?
No, I think I'm going to pass. So would you take any of those three over Hunt?
Who was it? Singletary and who else?
Singletary, Conner, and David Johnson.
Man, I don't know if I believe in David Johnson. I want to, just because I roster him in so many places, but probably not. I got to keep my own interests at heart.
I'd probably take Singletary.
He'd be close for me. I don't know. I'd probably go Singletary just because I more than likely own Chubb, and I'm not sure I want to own Chubb and Hunt. I don't know. I might go Hunt. That would be the closest one for me, though, Singletary. Odell Beckham Jr., wide receiver 12 in 2020, over or under? I have him under. So
I have him over.
I have him over as well. I have him at 16.
ADP of 32.67. He is wide receiver 12 off the board. Just ahead of him, Galladay, Cooper, and A.J. Brown. I would take him easily over Cooper and Brown. Galladay would be a coin flip for me just based on age. What about you guys?
I'm going Galladay and then Beckham, and Brown are a coin flip. But I'm taking Beckham over Cooper. You're rubbing off on me, Matt.
Hey, you didn't rub off on me. I'm not taking him over any of them.
Ooh, all right. Just behind him, this is so insane to me, Julio Jones, Allen Robinson, and DK Metcalf. I love Odell. I'm taking Julio over Odell, but that's it. What about you guys?
Yeah, I'm gonna take Julio. Even at, what is he, 30, he's still got about three pretty elite years left. But that's the only one.
I'm taking Julio and Allen Robinson.
All right. Interesting. Jarvis Landry, wide receiver 24 in 2020, over or under?
Push.
I have him over.
If I have to go, there's plenty of guys right behind him that could push him down, so I'm going to say over.
I am going to go under because I have Hollywood Brown and Amari Cooper right ahead of him, and Amari Cooper sucks, so I should move him up one spot anyway. So that will be changing here in a minute when I have a chance to adjust my rankings.
I feel like Amari Cooper Appreciation Society could be the name for the thing that we're trying to name right now.
No, not at all. No, I don't think anybody else. Does anybody even like him? No, I'm never. I was going to be really mean. I'm not going to say that. Amari Cooper is a fantastic human being and a very good wide receiver.
I thought you were going to say that could be a good name for an emo band.
No, I was going to be very, very mean, and I figured I shouldn't do that because Amari may want to come on the podcast one day and talk. And what I was going to say is extremely uncalled for, so I will not say it. Just before him, Michael Gallup, Hollywood Brown, and Deebo Samuel. Would you take him over any of those three?
Looking at my ranks, I'm gonna say yes. Yes, I would over all of them.
I would probably take him over Brown, just because who knows what the passing situation in Baltimore is going to be. But I actually like Gallup, so I would still take Gallup, and I can't remember Deebo. I mean, injuries are getting to be somewhat of a concern, but he's very talented, and they like him a lot there. I still think he has a shot to be the top receiver. Wide receiver, not top pass catcher.
I would take him over Hollywood and Deebo for sure. As Matt mentioned with Hollywood, you don't know the volume. Deebo, the injuries, and I think Ayuk's going to end up being the one there. And they don't have a very big passing game either. So I take him over both those. Gallup, I still like Gallup. I think he's going to be a stud. So I take Gallup over him. Just behind him, Devontae Parker, Henry Ruggs, and Christian Kirk. I would not take any of those three over Landry. Would you guys?
No. I mean, it's tempting to go Parker, but I just don't believe in his half a season of dominance.
It's because you believe in the GOAT, Preston Williams.
Yeah, I do.
I would not take any of them over him either.
Austin Hooper, tight end 15 in 2020. I feel like this is a no-brainer for all of us, but over-under.
Over.
I believe I am too, but I have to check.
I have him over. So
we have it coming out soon. I have him over.
All right. He has an ADP of 117. He is tied in 12 off the board. Just ahead of him, Gesicki, Goddard, and Hawkinson. Would you take him over any of those three? That would be a no for me, dog. What about you guys?
I concur.
Right behind him, Tyler Higbee, Hayden Hurst, and Irv Smith Jr. Higbee and Smith Jr., because I am buying all into those camp highlights that I keep seeing at Irv Smith now. So I would take those two over Hooper, but not Hurst. What about you guys?
I think it's a coin flip with Hurst for me. Right now, probably I'd go Hurst over Hooper because I feel like the next 3 years, Hurst is in the higher volume offense. So all things being equal for them, if they're going to play all 16 games, there's not catastrophic injuries all over the line or the skill positions. I think Hurst is going to get the better volume over the next 3 years. So I'd take them all over him.
I would probably just take Higbee.
David Njoku, tight end 24 in 2020, over or under?
Under.
Over.
I am going under as well, at least I think. I didn't look at my rankings. But ADP of 196.33. He is tight end 26 off the board. Just ahead of him, O.J. Howard, Jack Doyle, and Jared Cook. Would you take him over any of those three?
At the next commercial break, you should add David Njoku to your rankings.
Yeah, I have some bad news for you, friend.
Well, that's all right. We got to spice it up somehow. All right, go ahead.
This take on David Njoku is good for about 15 hours.
It is not sponsored by the rankings that will be dropping tomorrow. Go ahead.
What was the question again? I was.
Would you take him over? Would you take him over Howard, Doyle, and Cook? I don't even remember who I have ranked now. Blake Jarwin, get out of here. All right, I figured out who he's going over now.
Yeah, I think I would. It depends. If I'm taking Njoku, he's not my first tight end. So depending on who I took as my first, I can make the case for taking Doyle. Doyle, I think, is going to have a very solid floor. But I do like I do like Njoku's talent, but it's a coin flip with him and Doyle. Everybody else, no.
Definitely taking him over Howard.
Yeah, I would take him over all three. I like Doyle, but I think Njoku's upside is a little bit more than Doyle's. Just behind him, Devin Asiasi, Eric Ebron, and Will Dissly. I would not take any of them over Njoku. Would you?
Nope.
Ebron.
All right, let's move on to the Cincinnati Bengals. As I cursed us and said we were not taking long enough, we went a little long there on the over-under. So, Cincinnati, they finished 2-14. Can Joe Cool turn around the Cincy Kitties? Can he do it? Do you guys expect him? Let's go. I was trying to think of a good over-under for them. So, expecting they continue on this upward trend that they possibly could do with some of the talent they've added around them. Do you think Joe Burrow can take them to the playoffs in, say, the next 5 years?
Oh, yeah, in 5 years.
I'm not as confident. I mean, I don't even know who their coach is going to be. I'm not sold on Zach Taylor. I'm not sold on.
But he's touched Sean McVay.
Even Sean McVay didn't make the playoffs this last year. So just because you've breathed the same COVID era as Sean McVay does not mean that you're making the playoffs. Joe Burrow had one incredible year in college. So did Dwayne Haskins. And we saw the adjustment. And he was incredible that 1 year in college, and we saw the adjustment to NFL life on a not incredible team. Cincinnati has some really good skill position players, but their skill position players were not their biggest problem last year.
And a 37-year-old Joe Burrow couldn't beat out a 12-year-old Dwayne Haskins at Ohio State.
Yeah, so also it seemed like the state of the offensive line in Cincinnati was such that a fart might blow a hole right into their protection scheme. Presumably they'll have a little better health, be a little bit better this year. But, I mean, I'd like to see them play a game before I'm committing to him getting into the playoffs.
Yeah, I'm going to go with if 5-year window, I think they can. I believe in Burrow enough. I mentioned it before. He's one of the best anticipation throwers I've seen come out of the draft class in a while. He's got a lot of good players around. I think them getting Higgins helps a lot with Tate, Boyd. I'm not that big on Green. Obviously, what Matt said about the offensive line is not wrong. It's kind of what's killed Mixon here the past couple of years because he is a very good player. If they can improve that offensive line, though, I do think that within 5 years that he could possibly take him to the playoffs. So I would say that he can do it. Their new additions, A.J. Green was franchise tagged. They brought in Joe Burrow in the first round and T. Higgins in the second. Their losses, Andy Dalton goes to the Cowboys, Tyler Eifert goes to the Jaguars, and they cut to mine and Dennis's favorite running back, Rodney Anderson, unfortunately. Expiring contracts after this year, they declined John Ross's 5th-year option, A.J. Green, and that would be it because I messed this up. Yeah, big time. I didn't even put questions in here. Son of a gun. I did this way too late on this show sheet. All right, so Joe Mixon finishes RB14 with 225.4 points. Tyler Boyd finishes wide receiver 18 with 222.9 points. Auden Tate finished as wide receiver 68 with 101.
Golden Tate is really surprised that he registered for 2 teams last year. That's how powerful he is.
That damn good. He finished with 101.5 points in 13 games, and then CJ Uzoma, tight end 40 with 63.2. So since I forgot to put those questions on here for you guys, we're going to go off the cuff. We did a over-under rookie show with Ricky just a couple weekends ago. He has Joe Burrow breaking the record, I think, throwing for a ridiculous amount of yards and touchdowns. But I do think a fair number for him is right around 23, 24. Do you think that he can get over 23, 24 touchdowns this year and have a good year for fantasy, putting him, let's say, in the middle range of the QB2 for fantasy?
Yeah, I think so. I think he's going to have an up and down season, so I'm not going to be the least bit surprised if he has a 3 or 4 touchdown game, and I won't be surprised if he has a couple 0 touchdown games either. So he's a good passer. He's confident, and he's got weapons with Green and Tate and Ross and Higgins and Boyd and Mixon and Gio Bernard. So there's plenty of weapons. They just need the offensive line to gel a little bit. They're getting Jonah Williams back from injury, and that's a plus. So 22, 23, 24 touchdowns, I think, is well within the realm of possibility.
I'm going to say maybe he gets to 20, trending more under it, and bottom of QB2 tier.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still high on him. I think, I think I said on there, I think he gets 23 or 24 touchdowns. I think it happens just with the weapons around him. Like I said, I think I know some people think this is just, stupid to say, but I think being the son of a coach and the way he understands football is going to help him with the bad offensive line. I think he's going to be able to check to plays to help himself out. We saw him do that a lot at LSU. Obviously, you're playing better defenses than you did for the most part in the SEC. Good defenses, but not quite NFL defenses. But I still believe in him with the weapons they have around him. So I think Burrow at the end of the day could come in around. I guess I could pull up my ranks. I think I have him right around 16, 17. I'm at 14. So I could honestly see him falling anywhere between that 14 to 16 range this year. I think Burrow could be in for a good year. Mixon. Everybody's kind of buying into Mixon. The Bengals are getting Price and somebody else back from injury. They drafted an offensive lineman they think could be kind of good. What are we thinking for Mixon? Again, he's on his contract year this year. This is his final year with Cincinnati. So we expecting everybody talked about, I think me and Dennis, we were both on him last year too, saying, hey, he could be a top, 5, 6, 7 back. Struggles because of that offensive line. Is this a year that he produces and is one of those top backs for fantasy?
Yeah, I think he does. He's a very good running back. He catches the ball very well. He's elusive. He's big and powerful. So he's good in the red zone. He's good in the receiving game. He's good running the ball. If they can just get a little better offensive line play, and if Burrow is competent in the passing game, Ryan Finley wasn't the answer at quarterback last year, and a struggling, injured Andy Dalton was not either. So it's just a situation where he's clearly going to get more opportunity. They like him. They know what they have in him, and I think they're going to give him the ball.
I like him to be a top 10 running back again this year too. I think that's one place that I think they'll focus and be able to make some improvements. And a good running game and a good running back is a rookie quarterback's best friend.
So are tight ends as well. I believe that's how the sayings go. They don't have a good tight end.
They don't have a – It's a Drew Sample season.
I'm with you guys. I've got him at 5 for me. I think good things for Joe Mixon this year. What he can do receiving-wise as well, he's just got to stay healthy, and I think Mixon is in for a big year. At the wide receiver position –
Let's be honest, nobody deserves it more, right?
That's arguable. I know you say that in jest, but but anyways, AJ Green seems to already have hurt his hamstring. We know you've got Tyler Boyd, Auden Tate, T. Higgins. What are you guys expecting from this wide receiver core who, while Andy Dalton is not a bad quarterback, I think it's fair to say is not in the same class as Joe Burrow. So they have who could be an elite quarterback for fantasy football and NFL standards now throwing them the ball. Your guys' thoughts on this wide receiver core?
You forgot the GOAT, John Ross.
Go ahead and take it, Matt.
I think it's going to be interesting. I have Boyd ranked the highest of that group. If we knew AJ Green was going to be healthy and back to AJ Green of old, he would vault way up there. But it's troubling that he's already kind of dealing with some injuries. I was curious. I don't know if you saw the report that they were looking at possibly doing a long-term contract at the end of the season, which I think a lot of us thought they took T. Higgins in part because they were preparing for the future without AJ Green. So it's going to be an interesting lot of mouths to feed. I know you like Auden Tate and his potential too. It's going to be a lot of mouths to feed this year. And if Green doesn't end up moving on, it's going to continue to be kind of a cluster.
Well, I have them ranked back to back at 28 and 29. Green already tweaking his hammy. It's not a severe injury, but at 30, what is he, 31, 32?
31, I think.
It starts to become a little bit more of an issue. You don't recover quite as quick. Green being on the field definitely makes Tyler Boyd a better option, and Boyd has shown that he's a pretty high level option. He's a good receiver. I like both of them. I hope that Green is healthy because I think that it helps Boyd, it helps Mixon, and it helps Burrow.
Yeah, and even if they do keep AJ Green, I think having Green on one side and Higgins on the other is actually a good thing, not just for Burrow, but for that wide receiver core. You can move a guy like Tyler Boyd into the slot. I mean, that all of a sudden makes for a pretty good wide receiver core. So this year, I think if I'm buying into anybody, it's Tyler Boyd, just because I don't know what I'm getting from Green. I don't think Higgins is going to have a huge year this year. Another guy that I think I might take a shot on is Auden Tate because of how late he's going. And if Green goes down, I think then he's going to come in and it's going to be, I think, Boyd and then Tate as the two, unless Higgins just clearly, announces his presence on the field. But as we've talked about, I think the wide receivers for the most part might struggle a little bit this rookie year, for at least most of them, due to them coming in with no preseason games and limited practice time. So Auden Tate's a guy I like to, could be a sneaky ad at the end of your drafts, could have some maybe low-end wide receiver 2 upside if Green gets hurt. If not, he's a guy you could drop pretty early on if Green seems to be staying healthy. No real point talking about the tight end room, right? I mean, Matt, I know you mentioned Drew Sample, Uzoma.
That was a joke.
Okay,
that's because that was my long shot when I was looking at the tight ends from last year's rookie.
Gotcha.
They spent a second-round pick on him.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we were all shocked by that. It's just the Bengals bangling things up, man, or bungling things up. That's what they do, the Cincinnati Bungles. All right, let's go with the over-unders here. Oh, God, I just dropped my phone. Over-unders. What did I do? Joe Burrow, QB 14, over or under?
Over.
I will go over, even though I have him at 14. I think he's a better chance he drops to 15, 16, then goes up closer to the top 12. ADP of 118.83. He is QB 9 off the board. Right ahead of him, Carson Wentz, Josh Allen, and Russell Wilson. Would you guys take him over any of those three?
Nope.
Me either.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't. Allen would be close for me because his accuracy down the field does worry me sometimes, but his rushing upside is ridiculous. So probably would go Allen, but Allen is the closest one for me. After him, Rodgers, Tua, and Daniel Jones. Would you take any of those three over Burrow?
Staying on brand, I'm going to take Tua and Daniel Jones.
I feel like Dennis has to take Tua.
Yeah, I like Tua as the better prospect. So at that point, in Superflex, hopefully I've got a second quarterback already, and I've passed on Burrow for a good wide receiver. Probably not a running back at that point, but I'm going to take Tua and Jones.
I would not take any of them. Joe Mixon, RB10, over or under?
Under.
Under for me as well. He is an ADP of 10. He is RB7 off the board. Just ahead of him, Dalvin Cook, CEH, and Zeke. Would you take him over any of those three?
I feel like
go
ahead.
Okay. I'm taking him over CEH. And right, I still have Cook ranked over him, but I feel like I'm getting close to moving to flip-flopping them in the rankings.
Well, with Cook and Mixon both in contract years, it kind of gives them equally. Mixon feels like he has a better shot staying with his current team. Whether that's good or bad is a question. But I'm with Dennis. The CEH love, I feel like, has gone way too far right now. I mean, they've
already built a statue of him outside Kansas City Stadium.
The guy has not had a single carry, and when DeAndre Washington leads them in rushing week 1, everyone's going to go cry somewhere.
I like it. Bold take. Yes, I would take him. I would take him over CEH and Cook. The one thing that I do think helps Mixon, even though they are both in contract years, Mixon does not seem to value himself too highly, which I think Cook kind of does. Granted, Cook deserves it. He's been phenomenal when he's been healthy. But Mixon seems kind of fine to just get paid and stay with Cincinnati. I kind of like that attitude. I think there's a better chance of him doing that as well, because Cincinnati's kind of void of talent and they have cap room. So it might end up paying Mixon, where I don't know if that happens necessarily with Cook and Minnesota. Just after him, Chubb, Jacobs, and Taylor. Would you take any of those three over Mixon?
Nope.
Chubb and Taylor.
Chubb would be close for me. Taylor for sure. Boyd, wide receiver 24, over or under?
Over.
I'm going to go over as well.
Dang it. I keep closing out of my rankings. Where did I have Tyler Boyd at?
27.
I slight over, so I will keep it that way. But I think there's a shot. Again, if AJ Green gets hurt, he's going under for sure. ADP of 59.67, wide receiver 30 off the board. Just ahead of him, Stephon Diggs, Justin Jefferson, and the always just seems hated Robert Woods. Would you take him over any of those three? Or disrespected, I should have said.
I currently have Diggs over him in redraft, but for Dynasty, I'm probably going to take Boyd. I'm just not digging Diggs.
Just not digging Stephon?
I'm not. I'm probably going to take Boyd over Diggs, Boyd over Jefferson, and it'll be a coin flip with Woods.
I'd take him over Jefferson.
I'd probably take him over Diggs and Jefferson. I'm going to put some respect on Robert Woods' names. I'll take you over Robert Woods. I'll take you, Woods. I'll take you.
We discount Woods, and he ends up being like a wide receiver 1 or a top.
I know.
Wide receiver 2.
That's why I'll take Woods. I won't disrespect you anymore, my friend. Right after him, Deebo Samuel, Hollywood Brown, and Michael Gallup. Would you take any of those three over Boyd?
Deebo is starting to scare me with the injuries. Typically, I think, a month ago, 6 weeks ago, I would say I definitely would have taken Deebo. Hollywood is, that's really a contrast in boomer bust versus safe floor players between Boyd and Hollywood. And honestly, at the point where they're going in the draft, I'm drafting floor more often, so I'm not taking Hollywood over him. And it's a toss up with Gallup. Depends on what kind of mood I'm in. Honestly, with Gallup, am I in my God damn it, Michael Gallup is going to be the star there, or am I in the man? I don't know. He had a pretty high drop rate. I go back and forth with him, so be a coin flip with Gallup.
Taking Gallup, better quarterback, better offense.
Ooh, yeah, I think Gallup's the only one for me as well. AJ Green, wide receiver 35, over or under?
Under.
Let me check. That's so close.
I have him just slightly over. I have him at 41, I believe. So
you have him at 34, Fox.
Yeah, so slightly under.
All right.
I knew it was like really close. I thought, did you just Dennis?
It's funny. I should just look at the rankings. I don't. I just guess off the top of my head. Well, where do I think they can finish? So I know. I should. More I think about, I'm like, gosh, I should just go. You gave me the answer. I should just go in and look at it. But ADP of 93.5. He is wide receiver 48 off the board. Just ahead of him, Mike Williams, Darius Slayton, and Will Fuller. Would you take him over any of those three?
I'm taking him over Fuller.
Probably take him over Mike Williams.
I think Fuller for me as well. He just can't stay healthy. After him, Mims, Hilton, and Laviska Shenault. Would you take any of those three over Green?
I can make the case for Hilton, but where do I have Hilton at?
I'm definitely taking Hilton.
Yeah, I got Hilton one spot above him, but I don't think I'm taking either of the other two. Definitely not taking Shenault.
Yeah, Hilton for sure. I actually think Mims and Shenault are close. I think at this point in the draft, I'm going to take some rookies with some upside and see what happens for me. So I would actually probably take all three.
That's the thing. If you're talking about dynasty, we're hoping AJ Green gets on the field this year, and then it's a total question. If you're talking redraft, I'm snagging Green over the two rookies because if he can get on the field, he has a better shot at production.
Well, we're talking dynasty on that. And even redraft, though, I think I would. I think Shenault might be okay this year. Green, I have no doubt that if Green stays healthy, he's going to be good. But what happens when he's out week 3? You have a better shot of getting viable points from guys like Mims and Shenault at that point. So I can't. Green's already hurt again, and he's, I think, a Hall of Fame wide receiver, but he can't stay healthy. It's been a decline we've seen the past 3 years where he just can't seem to stay healthy. And getting older as I am, I realize it's hard for me to stay healthy, and I'm not a world-class athlete, don't get me wrong, but with the way that he plays the game and he just keeps getting injured, I just can't buy into him staying healthy anymore. That's just my opinion. So T. Higgins, wide receiver 40 in 2020, over or under?
I'm going to say...
Pretty sure none of us have him ranked. So
yeah, I'm going over.
Yeah, I'm going over. If for some reason Green just falls apart in the next 4 weeks, I suppose I could make the case for Higgins to be under, but right now he's over.
Yeah, I will say the same thing. I think if Green gets hurt, he has a chance to go under that. ADP 89.67, wide receiver 43 off the board. Just ahead of him, Brandon Cooks, Brandon Ayuk, and Deontay Johnson. You taking any of those, or him over any of those three?
Not over Ayuk at that point. If I went robust running back in a draft, then I'm probably gonna take Cooks because I feel like Cooks is getting the playing time this year. And I'm probably taking Deontay Johnson for the same reason over Higgins if I went robust running back. And so I'm trying to fill out wide receiver spots. So I guess, yes, I'm taking all of them. Not Ayuk. Actually, I have Higgins over Ayuk, so my bad.
I'm taking Higgins over all of them.
I think I am too. I had him ranked higher, so I've got in my rookie ranking, so I would take him over all of them. Just behind him, Michael Pittman, Will Fuller, and Darius Slayton. Would you take any of those three over Higgins?
I think I'd take Pittman and Slayton.
I would take Pittman.
Pittman for sure for me. Slayton would be a coin flip. And do we even want to do CJ Uzoma? I just threw it on there so we'd have a tight end. I mean, I don't think any of us have him ranked, but Uzoma, tight end 23 in the 2020 season, over or under? I'm trying to see if I have him ranked. I do not.
Over.
Yeah, over.
Over as well. ADP of 238, tight end 38 off the board. Just ahead of him, Khalil Waring, Dan Arnold, and Caden Smith. Dan Arnold. I didn't realize he was still in the league. You taking him over any of those three?
Over. I'm probably taking Uzoma over Caden Smith because Uzoma is a starter and Smith is a third stringer.
Is Dan Arnold a starter?
Dan Arnold was on Matthew Berry's love list.
Yeah.
Wow. You know,
he might be the starter in Arizona.
I'll put it to you this way. Much respect to the godfather of fantasy. I'm good. I'll pass on Dan Arnold.
You know what? At that point in time, I actually would probably take Drew Sample because if you're just taking somebody to put on your bench to look at, I'm not a CJ Uzoma truther.
Yeah, I would not take him over any of the. I would take him over Arnold, I guess, since I've been bashing on him the past minute. But outside of that, I'm not taking him over Smith or Warren. Just behind him, Greg Olson, Harrison Bryant, and Darren Fells. I would take all three over Uzoma. What about you guys?
I would too.
I go back. I could go. You know, I'm probably not taking Olson over Uzoma, but I'm also not taking Uzoma. So
Yeah, I got you.
I would take all three because I think you have at least feels like reasonable shots at touchdown upside with Olsen and Fells, putting them in there because we've seen both of them, just for as hobbled or slow as they might be, to be able to stand up there and be targets in the end zone. Russell Wilson loves to hit tight ends in the end zone, and Watson used Fells quite a bit last year, and then Harrison Bryant we talked about has some potential in the future. So all of them, you have to figure Cincinnati does something else at tight end eventually.
All right, so that will do it for us. That wraps up the AFC North and all of our team previews. We have knocked out every single one of them. We've kind of all been dancing around it here a little bit. We have a huge thing dropping tomorrow. Follow all of us. We'll all be tweeting about it. It'll be dropping between – what did he just tell me? I forgot. 11 a.m.
Midnight and midnight.
Well, he's dropping everything, I think, sometime after 11 a.m. Eastern time, I believe. So right around then, you'll see it. Ricky, who runs our network, he'll drop it. I'm sure we'll all retweet it out. It should be a lot of fun. We're all pretty excited about it. We'll be back next week talking about our predictions for the NFC teams and AFC teams, hoping to have Tony back with us on Thursday so he can profess all of his love for the Indianapolis Colts as we talk about how they won't make the playoffs in front of him. Just kidding, Tony. If you end up
I don't have
to
them making the playoffs.
Well, never mind. Matt is going to upset you. All right, but we will be back next week. Everybody, have yourselves a good weekend. Enjoy all of the camp stuff that's going on NFL Network, and we will talk to you guys again on Monday.